This is the August 28th Planning Board meeting in Newton, and we're going to open the meeting with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will appoint Mr. Zott as a voting member in Mr. Holland's place. Yes, I remembered. First item on the agenda is a non-binding discussion with Michael Doucette, 44 Bear Hill Road Extension, for conditions of notice decision dated January 14th, 2014. Is Mr. Doucette here yet? No. Okay. We're gonna put this after the next public hearing then. Okay. Okay, the next public hearing is Father and Son Realty Trust, Todd Fitzgerald, 5-lot subdivision, Courierville Road, map 15, block 2, lot 1-1, and I see that Mr. Quintel is here to speak for Mr. Fitzgerald. Just gonna have to wait now.
Is he okay?
Yep.
Okay. My name's Dennis Quintel. I'm the engineer for Todd Fitzgerald, who's here. And so if you recall, a couple months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, we were into this planning board for a subdivision of this property and subdivided off the homestead and the remaining land. So we had done a perimeter survey and identified wetlands and done some soil testing on that property. So we took a look at then subdivision of the property. So we looked at the soils between the wetlands and the street, and we find that there's enough uplands there for calculation for lot size requirements without even considering the land that's in the back. So we did our lot size calculations and find that, we need to have at least 30,000 square feet of contiguous upland. And each of these lots that we're proposing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots, has greater than 30,000 square feet. And so each, in our calculation for lot size by soil type, we come up with greater than the minimum requirements for the lots on each of these, even though we haven't even considered the uplands in the rear. So looking at this, as you can see, what we've tried to do is, looking at the town rules and regulations, they want to have rectangular lots. So this is one place where I don't have to argue that I can't get rectangular lots because we've done a pretty good job trying to get rectangular lots. And so, as you can see, we did our test pits along the front, and we provided a 4,000 square foot area for a septic system in each of the lots. We show a typical location for a dwelling and well, and the protective zones around the well that are far enough away from the septic system so there aren't a problem. So you can see how the wetlands come down by in the back. So we're far enough away from those. Most of the work that's going to be done on these lots is their individual lots, so it isn't like we're opening up a road and opening up a large piece of property. So each of these lots will be pretty much done independently. And so when a driveway gets put in and a cellar hole dug, the groundwork that's done on, typically on houses like this, takes, a few months to do. So there's not really too much ground disturbance, and if there's any work that's done anywhere near wetlands, then obviously they would be putting up silt fence to protect the wetlands for stormwater possibility of any erosion or sediments getting near the wetlands. But as you can see, most of the building is away from the wetlands. Only this well is fairly close by, but again, that can be protected. It's, probably 10 or 20 feet off the wetlands, and it's only for drilling the well and adding a trench from there to the house, so which, shouldn't take too much land disturbance. They might decide to put that well even closer to the home if they want also. I just show it far enough back there because sometimes people want to put a pool in behind their house. So we wouldn't want to put a well right up tight to the house, but we'd like to keep it back a little bit so that people have the option of putting a pool in if they want to put a pool in. So we're taking a look at that and trying to meet the requirements to make all the lots appealing, make them all fairly rectangular in nature, and each of them have frontage and area, and meet the requirements for upland, lot size requirements for the soil calculations. We don't have state subdivision approval yet, but that would be one of the conditions we would like to have. We did submit a waiver for doing a stormwater management plan, and like I said, we aren't really opening up a big piece of property with a road or anything, so we thought it would be appropriate in situations like this, which we have done on previously applications similar to this, is ask for a waiver from the requirement for stormwater management plan, since we really aren't opening up a big piece of property. It's only for the individual homes and a driveway and leaching system. So that's what we provided. The first sheet is a sheet for recording purposes. It shows the lot line, shows the wetlands, shows the setback lines, building setback lines, and that's what shows the lot areas needed for people to write and the bearings and distance around each lot to be able to write deeds. So that's for recording purposes, and this is lot size by soil type plan that shows that, and it shows the contours, grading. Most of the land there is fairly flat, not much relief to it, so like I said, not much runoff, possibilities of any erosion like that. So with that, I guess, you know, we've sent notice to abutters. We have abutters located on the plans, and I guess with that, I could answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay. Mr. Melvin? Yeah.
Dennis, how far are the leach fields from the street?
Well, they have to be a minimum of 10 feet from the property line, but the 4K areas we show here, well, 1 inch is 60 feet, so it probably has 30 feet, 30 feet. This one here is probably at least 15. We have to be probably 10 to 15 here, and probably 10 to 15 here. So the state requirement's 10 feet off the property lines. But that's the 4K areas. When you actually do the septic design, it's a 4,000 square foot area. Leach field is less than 1,000.
Okay, that's my next question is, so the intent is to cut all them trees down?
Not necessarily, no.
Mr.
No. And that's
Melvin,
kind
can-
of what, one of
Mr.
the,
Melvin, do you have your thing on? Yeah, you speak just a little louder, because I know that it's not catching, because I can hardly hear you from here. Sorry.
so to answer your question, that's kind of why we showed the dwellings back a little bit on the lots, so that we could maintain as much vegetation along the street as possible. And some thinning will have to be done, because when you build a house in a wooded area like that, sometimes there's some huge trees that if they wound up blowing down, they could wind up harming the houses. So typically when a project is done like this, there's some selective cutting on the big trees and smaller trees left, and that way there, by opening up a canopy like that, then the smaller vegetation gets a chance to grow and thicken in back in along the edge of the road. So that's kind of what we anticipate. This,
So there's going to be no cutting in the back?
I wouldn't think there'd be anything cut in the back. I mean, it'd be up to the homeowners on that, but I mean, again, I don't know what your plans are for that, but that's selective
There's
cutting.
a lot of dead pines up in there, and there's a lot of dead wood out in the sand in some places.
I just hate to see it stretch.
It'll be similar to Chase Road.
Mr. Fitzgerald, yeah, I was
to
just
the
going to say,
microphone.
Yeah.
I need you up at the microphone if you're going to speak.
Hi, Todd Fitzgerald. It'll be similar to the Chase Road project that I did around the corner. A lot of selective cutting on like the big pines that could fall on the homes and the ones that are dead. And there's a lot of dead trees out there over on Curryville Road. I don't know if anybody's walked the property out there, but there's quite a bit of dead wood out there that needs to be taken down too.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Radden, you have any comments?
At this point, The first issue you should take up is the waiver. If you decide to grant the waiver, then this application appears complete with your subdivision requirements, and it does meet all of your zoning requirements as well.
Okay. Do we have some board discussion? Do you have any more questions from the board? Yes.
Actually, I would go even further than Mr. Melvin. I would like to see a note on here about wherever possible retaining trees along the road, possibly maybe even establishing a 10-foot no-cut or 15-foot no-cut along the edge of the road. That is a scenic road.
Right, I was gonna meet with the Conservation Commission as well for the scenic road.
Okay.
There are gonna have to be some that come down on the roadway for power to come in, for the poles. But we're gonna keep as many as we can in that area, especially with the lines going to all the separate houses.
Okay, well, lines can go up driveways.
Because how wide is that road? And how much traffic can a dirt road really carry? And, you know, is this a matter of that we really aren't ready to have more development on an improved road?
Have you seen the rest of the road? There's a lot of houses along that road.
And that's my concern. There's already a lot of houses. This is adding more to it.
I'm not concerned about the fact that it's a dirt road because those are absolutely permitted. However, my other question had to do with whether or not we were going to require some sort of bond.
Yeah.
Because that much work.
I had that
Paved
concern, too.
service is one thing, but that much heavy trucking on a unpaved service.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about the width of that road and carrying all of this extra traffic. It's
I
a very
have-
narrow space.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mr. Fitzgerald. Can you tell me, are you going to build these houses one by one, or will you maybe be working on a couple of them at the same time?
Possibly a couple at the same time.
Okay. All right. Jen?
Well, you are starting to delve into the details of the application, but if you take up the waiver, and if it is granted, then I would recommend you accept the application as complete, and then certainly continue on with the discussion of the detail. You can open it up to the public so they can ask their questions or provide comments.
Okay, so we need to address the variance.
Waiver.
Waiver, excuse me.
So in terms of the stormwater, basically, you're going to be putting in a small driveway for each house. You're not talking about any much other impervious surface.
No, in the driveway's a possibility of keeping them gravel too. There's a possibility they'd be gravel, but whatever it is, it's, you know, you're talking about 10 or 12 feet wide for a gravel driveway. It's fairly flat, so you'd see the driveway sloping off from the roadway and then basically flat in toward the homes. And, you know, the traffic, I mean, it wouldn't be much more traffic as far as on the road is concerned for these number of homes. As far as heavy traffic is concerned, during construction, you'll have the construction workers going back and forth, and yes, you'll have a cement truck or two or three that have to pour a foundation. You'll have lumber deliveries, but those are sporadic, and that would only happen, you know, at the beginning of construction of each home. So there really wouldn't be a lot more traffic on the roadway. And as far as heavy traffic is concerned, it's not much different than heavy trucks that maintain the road. That would be UPS deliveries, it would be sand salt trucks in the wintertime, springtime, going through there. I know Mike Pavero grades the road 2-3 times a year, and he does a pretty good job keeping it maintained. But certainly, we don't expect a lot of traffic on that road, much more than there is right now.
One comment I will make, and that is that the road is actually uphill from all of the property, so we don't, any stormwater is not going to run onto the road, it's going to run backwards towards the stream.
So all of the stormwater is going to run from the road to the wetland as opposed to...
No, all the stormwater from the driveway and
Okay. We'll try talking a little louder. Sorry about that.
The stormwater from the driveways and from the houses and any other structures, sheds, would drain back towards the wetland. It would go over the uplands and then into the wetland, just
right.
because of the slope.
Yeah, okay.
And the roadway is likely draining somewhat back onto that property anyway, just because of the slope and the natural topography.
Okay. And there's enough vegetative surface there to sort of filter it before it gets to the wetlands, okay?
The impact of a single residential home on stormwater is fairly minimal, especially if it's sloping in that direction.
Right, okay. So,
I will make a motion that we grant the waiver for...
You need to open up the waiver
Oh.
to public comment.
oh,
You have to open the public
really?
hearing.
The waiver? Okay. I will o-
And I will say, just for the public, this is just for a waiver from stormwater regulations. The public will have the opportunity to talk about other aspects of the plan as a whole in just a few minutes.
Okay, so I will open up for anyone who has any comments on the waiver only. You'll have to come up to the podium and identify yourself, please.
I'm Barbara Frake. I live on Courierville Road.
Ma'am, you're going to have to speak a little louder because we can't hear you either, sorry.
I'm Barbara Frake. I live on Courierville Road. I've been there about 33, 34 years. The water situation there is kind of unpredictable. There was one year not that long ago, and since then that part of the road has been improved, but the road was washed out at the end near the cemetery 4 times in about 6 weeks. The brook or river, whatever you call it, went right over the top. Since then, there have been larger culverts put in, but there's no way of knowing how high the water's going to get, and when it goes that high, pine trees tend to uproot and fall over because they have so little to stand on. The end of the road at Maple Avenue has also been flooded completely over the top, where the pond that had about 1 million goldfish in it went off into the woods on the other side of the road. Testing now on the high parts doesn't tell you anything about what's going to happen, how close that water's going to come up and swamp near the houses. It's just a delicate situation, and it's worrisome. You can have a lot of problems with water in your basement and things washing away, and I hate to see a mistake made.
Okay, appreciate your comment. I particularly don't think that just the houses would affect what you're speaking of, because that's the other water level, so.
I will say that none of this property is located on a floodplain, and it's not in any of FEMA's floodplain maps either in this particular
Okay.
location.
All right, did you hear that? Okay, none of the properties are on the floodplain, so,
No,
no, nope,
that doesn't mean flooding can't occur, but they are not part of the floodplain maps.
okay. Yes,
Nancy Slombo, I'm from the Conservation Department. You know, the whole road is wet. We all know that, especially on that side. Can we get a bond on the road? I mean, Chase Road, you really did a number to that road. You know, to have those big trucks coming in and out
Well,
on that
that's-
dirt
That-
road.
that's
yeah,
what-
that's
what I
one of the
brought up.
things that we're going to discuss, but right now we were just
You know,
talking
the
about
stormwater management, we've all been through, you know, where's the water going? That's what we're all trying to track right now. You know, you're gonna do something about stormwater the next, what, you're talking about it today. That's why conservation's here too.
Right,
So where is all the water going from? And so when they put these 5 houses in, where is all that water gonna drain to? So are we gonna flood another neighbor? Too. You know, so we all have to think about that,
Okay,
all right?
thank you. Okay. Do we have anybody else who wants to have any comment on the waiver at all? Okay, we appreciate your comments. The board?
Just in response to some of the questions that were brought up, one of the things that I did mention was the possibility of a road bond to protect or to,
Right, but we're still, right now, we're talking about the waiver.
I'm addressing
All right.
waiver. Regarding the stormwater management waiver, if you look at how small a footprint those buildings are on the properties, even allotting for a driveway, there should be plenty, you're not creating so much impervious surface that the land should not be able to still continue to absorb the water that it presently is.
I agree with that.
A minor amount of difference, and the distance from the wetlands, I believe it's capable of, now Jennifer may look at me and say, no.
No, I agree.
In an
I agree with
absolute
that.
fact, I can't tell you that. I am not qualified to tell you that. What I can tell you is the impervious footprint on these properties would be relatively small compared to the lot size. It will flow back towards the wetland. And one of the things with stormwater management just in general is you're not trying to retain every drop of water that sits on a property. You're not trying to keep it completely on that property. You're just not trying to not increase any runoff.
Right.
So there's generally capacity on properties that are this big with this type of soil to be able to infiltrate a small additional amount of stormwater likely to be generated.
Right, so what would come off the roof of a house and stuff would be absorbed by the grassy area between that house and the wetlands.
Correct.
Prior to it impacting
Right.
that. As far as flooding is concerned, I live on the side of a hill, and every 4 or 5 years, we get a rainstorm that is heavy enough and what have you, that I end up with water in my cellar. You can't legislate against that. There's no way of knowing.
If that project had been done where you lived improperly, you wouldn't have water in the basement.
Excuse me?
If that project where you lived had been done properly, you would not have water in your basement.
No, I occasionally get water in my basement because the rainfall is too heavy for the water to absorb at the speed that it comes down, and,
Coming down at a fast rate.
right.
Yeah.
And consequently,
If that hadn't been cut down, it wouldn't be coming down at that fast rate.
Okay.
no, because mine is from the road up.
I know you live behind.
It can't percolate through the soil fast enough so that I end up with water in my garage area.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, at our last meeting, we discussed that all applications, 10K plus site plans, would have to come under this jurisdiction.
But
We haven't approved those yet.
we haven't approved that yet, and that was for commercial.
That was for site plans.
Right.
That was for site plan, and that was for commercial.
I will say, but based on that threshold, this
Right.
is closer to a impervious surface of maybe 5
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not saying a
Right.
bad
at the
precedent.
most.
No, no.
Jen, the meeting before that, she recommended that anything over 5 house lots, stormwater management.
Right, so. Okay,
And I see no reason why we
Nope,
shouldn't
that's-
proceed.
thank you.
So do you want,
Yeah,
do you
go
want to have it during the public hearing or after the public hearing?
What, no, we need to do the waiver first, and then we have to see if we're going to accept the plan.
Correct.
I will move to grant a waiver from subdivision regulation 8.2.3A to Father and Son Realty regarding the plan at Block 2, sorry, map 15, Block 2, Lot 1-1.
Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
Okay, Mr. White? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And my reasoning why I oppose is because of what Jennifer said in the beginning, we started MS4, over 5 lots and over, we should be doing it.
But we haven't adopted that yet. Okay. All right. Okay, all right, so the waiver has been granted, and I need to have a motion whether to accept this plan as complete or not.
Now,
I'll make a motion.
should we have public discussion?
No,
about
we have
the
to, we have to accept it as complete first. We're not approving anything yet, we're just accepting it as complete.
I'll make a motion that the application is complete.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to open up the floor to the abutters. If you have comment, if you would come to the podium, would you state your name and, say what you want to say, try to keep it a little short, since there's a lot of people here. I don't know how many people want to speak. And if you would not repeat the same thing as the person before you, that would help. So, anybody here wish to come up here and speak?
Michael Willett, 39 Currierville Road. I really have no problem with his subdivisions here. My problem is with the road. The road's very narrow in places. It's just a dirt road. 5 houses, it's 10 cars, maybe 15. 3 or 4 trips a day in and out of there, it's another 45 cars. It's a very narrow road. 2 pickups couldn't pass in some spots. Springtime, late fall, there's days when the school buses can't get through there because the road's so muddy. Wintertime, it's pretty much a sheet of ice through that whole section right there. The road agent does a real good job. He keeps the road open, keeps it smooth. But with that tree canopy and the snow melt, that road is just a sheet of ice in the winter. There's a couple times I've pulled cars out of the woods there with my pickup truck, and I just don't think that the road's big enough to take that many vehicles. And plus, like the women said, it floods down here at the stream. They put a new culvert in, but the culvert's filling with silt, and there's a couple of beaver swimming around in there, so that's just a matter of time before that floods again, too. So that's my problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have anybody else would like to speak? Would the road agent like to say anything? I'll give everybody else a chance. Okay.
Hello, my name is Molly Wilson. I'm the new chair of the Conservation Committee. I don't think many people have seen me yet, so hello. My first question is actually for you. You said that you came to a conservation meeting? No. Oh, okay. We would love that. Yes, we meet first Thursday, 7 p.m. of the month. I know there's quite a few people sitting in this room right now who own horses in town, myself included. I live over on Heath Street. We have a few horses over there. I ride the trails. I ride Bush Farm a lot. I've ridden a trail recently that runs right through this property that a lot of people in town are using right now. If this plan goes in, we're gonna lose a trail that connects 2 conservation areas together, because it comes right out to the town forest. So on the other side of the street of these developments here. We would like to somehow be able to keep this trail. It runs along the wetlands. There's gonna be no houses back there. There's gonna be no one's yard, hopefully back there. I mean, next to a wetland, be kind of mosquito-y. Our goal is to sit down at the next conservation meeting. Couldn't make a meeting happen before tonight, unfortunately. But our goal is to sit down at the next meeting and maybe make some type of plan that we can maybe all work together, try to make this happen so that we can keep this trail. It's well-used, it's well-loved, and a lot of people in town would definitely benefit from it, so. That's it.
I'd just like to make a comment, and I think that you're going to have your discussion with the property owner on that.
With what?
You're going to have your discussion
Yes,
with the property
definitely. That's
owner
why I
on
would
that.
love-
Because the board has really nothing to do with
Yeah.
that kind of decision.
Yeah, well, I just
Okay.
wanted to take this opportunity to
I
be able to say
appreciate
so.
that.
That's all, so.
Yes.
So just one option you could do that, you're correct, the planning board has very little you can require of this, but if something is able to be negotiated, like a right-of-way or a small public easement,
Easement, yeah.
that it be noted on the plan.
Correct. We want it
That
to be
would be
noted
the
going
one.
into this that there is a trail, there could be a public easement through here, if we can work something out, and it would be on that, exactly.
Okay.
So,
We take that into consideration, and
Actually, before this person leaves, does the town already own any easements on either side of this property?
No.
no. What was that?
yeah, I need her to come up to the podium.
So you got the Curryville property, and then it owns a piece of property off of Maple Ave. Right here.
Then that trail currently runs through that town
So
property.
we can come out of Bush Farm, go down Patriots. You
Okay.
can go down this section off of Maple Ave, and the trails, otherwise you can come from Karen O'Malley's house and go in back of all these houses. To get out to Curryville Road, we want to connect this to that, to that.
Okay.
Right.
Again,
You know
you
what
need
I
to
mean?
speak to
So,
the property owner.
Are we is the town making, at one time, we actually had a trail committee in town. It failed to do
Yeah,
anything.
conservation pretty much picks up any trails that are on town property.
Right.
Yeah.
But is the Conservation Commission making an effort to acquire other easements?
If we can, yes.
Talking about now is,
If we can acquire an easement to keep this trail, that would be ideal. The trail is very narrow, it's not a nuisance trail.
Move it, just
where is the, what side of the wetland is the trail on?
It's on the side, the wetlands run here, it runs right on this side.
So it's on the proposed
It's on the high
house
side,
side?
yes, we don't ride in the wetlands.
No, but I wasn't sure if it was
Yeah.
connected on the other side.
But it
of the
would be on the back of those people's properties.
Back of their
Correct,
houses,
yeah.
right.
here's Maple Ave, and so here's
yeah.
the town land that goes all the way to the to the
Right.
dump. Well, the trail comes along in here, so we wanted to try to connect Curryville,
Now,
because we can go down Patriots Ave to get to,
the property we're talking about now is here.
in there,
Is
yeah.
actually this lower section
yeah.
here. Because this is the entire Witherspoon property here. So you would actually need, because the transfer station ends basically at this little brook. You would need to actually be able to go down either Witherspoon's existing property.
or right on the edge of the two lots, from Witherspoon's to that other lot.
Well, no, Witherspoon's comes all, is the, that you can't get there without crossing Witherspoon.
Right.
So they must cross that too.
But we do have to remember, that this is all private property.
Yeah, I
Well, we say it's a trail that we, that we use, because I've ridden horses through those trails many times myself.
I know.
Okay. All right.
So, just a quick response to a
Yeah.
trail system. I've run across this a number of times.
If everybody could stop talking so that we could hear the person at the podium, please.
I've
Thank
run
you.
across this a number of times in other towns, presenting plans, and people talk about trails and access and whatnot, and getting easements and things. And that's really something that needs to be worked out with the landowner.
Right.
And if they work something out, then that would be, obviously, an easement would be shown on the final plan that gets recorded. However, it's typically difficult to come up with an agreement and proper wording for an easement, because the question would come is who's liable for anybody that gets hurt?
Right.
Who maintains the trail? Who picks up the litter? Who maintains the question of whether it's only for horses, or whether the four-wheelers are gonna go there, or snowmobilers? Are they gonna go through there in the middle of the night and cause a problem for the people that live here? So it can open up a big can of worms if it's not done correctly, and it's very difficult to come up with an easement for that type of a scenario. But certainly, that's something that they can meet with Mr. Fitzgerald and talk about, and if they can come up with something, all I gotta say is that if they do, and we certainly would show something on the plan, final
Okay.
plan, and that could be a condition of approval, too.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Oh, just
Mr. Dottie.
my final comment on the trails. I don't believe that it should stop us or throw an impediment.
No, I agree. I agree,
In
because
the-
that's going to be something that the Conservation Commission is going to be discussing with the property owner.
Yeah,
Right.
simply having a condition that if an easement is executed, so if they come to terms with the landowner, that it's just noted on the plan. You're not holding up any approvals. If something doesn't happen, then it can go forward.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Pending
I
all
wouldn't
other
make that
approvals.
a condition of approval that the
If
homeowner,
an easement.
that the
Right.
builder had to give an easement to the town.
No, no,
No,
but
no,
what
no.
Jen is saying is, if an easement was negotiated,
Right.
that note should be on the plan.
Yes,
So that's all she
or
said.
at least on the individual deeds.
It would
Oh.
have to be.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would have to be
Okay.
on the
I
individual.
would just like to add one more thought, too, because even if something is not worked out with the current owner, these lots are gonna be sold to individuals, and who knows, an individual that buys one of these lots could be somebody in this room, or it could be somebody else that has horses that would love to put an access way through their property to get to the rear. So it can
Right.
happen now, or it could happen later in the future as well, also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quintel. Any other abutters? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a couple of comments. There was mention of having to cut trees down to put power lines in. I know that the Weatherspoon property has the power lines underground, and these are all next to their house. And I want to be sure that no one is intending that if these houses are built, that it would be a step toward paving the road. I don't know if there's anyone on the road who lives there that wants it paved. It's traditionally been something nobody wanted. And it would be pretty tragic to change the character of it that much when it's the only thing that's like that that's left in town.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I believe the category of this road prevents it from being paved.
I believe so too, because it's not the right width and it's not,
Excuse
it's
Excuse
a
me, what?
category.
I didn't hear your comment.
Oh, the category, it's a Category 9 road?
Class
I don't know,
6.
something like that.
What?
I'm sorry, it's a class 5 road.
Class 5.
Class 5.
I don't believe that if
Yeah.
the town looked at the road agent and said, yes, pave Currierville Road, I don't think we can, because
Right.
it doesn't have the right base, it doesn't have the right width.
Right, it's not
Well,
wide
you,
enough.
you can build a road.
We could build it, I mean,
That's,
the town would, the town of Newton would never expend that kind of money to pave to create a paved road out of Currierville.
Right.
Planning board has the right to request off-site improvements as well.
right.
True.
I think that would be a little prohibitive.
Yeah,
At some point, if you're going to develop the area, you have to have the infrastructure to support the development.
Right.
You can't just keep putting houses on a dirt road and you're getting more and more things. And so now the school bus and the UPS truck can't pass each other. And that's where my concerns are.
Well, I think I just think that road being paved is like a whole nother discussion, which really isn't our thing. It's the selectmen and whatever. I just don't think it's wide enough, and this is not the forum in which to discuss that.
But if it isn't wide enough, then you shouldn't go forward with the development.
But we can make it a requirement that the developer
To what?
widen the road
No.
No.
as
No.
part of,
You,
as part of the
you
improvement.
could technically
Absolutely.
require an off-site improvement of, you don't issue building permits, occupancy permits until a road is paved up to the driveways of the, it would be unusual to do that for a development of this type. These are 5 house lots. This is
Right.
not a big commercial site going in. It's already got a good number of houses. I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm just saying it would be unusual.
I agree.
Right, yeah, and from my point of view, I don't think it would make any sense to pave in front of that and then the rest of the road is the way
I'm
it
not talking
is.
about paving the road, I'm talking about, it's possible that we could have parts of the road widened to improve the road, not necessarily
I don't know,
pave the road.
yeah, but that's such a short area, I think it's sort of a,
But it needs to carry the traffic
well,
that's
but
going to be
it's
there.
carrying traffic now, and this is only 5 houses, so.
And then there'll be another 5 houses and another
Well,
5 houses.
if it's-
You do it one house at a time and it never gets,
If it's
Yeah.
buildable property, that's what could happen, yes. Mr. Pavero?
I guess it's my turn.
Yes, it is.
Mike Pavero, Newton Road agent. This is problematic. The gentleman that came up first, you live on that road. I can tell you, 5 houses on that will dramatically increase the traffic volume on that road. We have different conversations going on here. They will not be resolved tonight. Roger, you're correct. Something has to be looked in totality of that road, whether it's done in phases, pieces, whatever the case may be, but look at the whole road. Decision's gonna have to be made, and I know there's a large group that do not want to pave that road. And that will become more problematic. I have the town engineer looking at 3 options. I put him on this 2 months ago, 3 months ago. If we pave it, you're gonna have to widen that drastically to put a drainage structure system in there. Somewhere you're gonna have to outlet those drainage structures. There's gonna need to be easements through the lots. It's not as simple and can't be swept under the rug as it's only that section. You're putting 5 houses down there. You're increasing the volume of houses on that road by what, 40%? There's not a lot of houses on that road. There just isn't. I'm not here to say it should be paved. That's not why I'm at this podium. I'm here because some provision needs to be in place for financial relief to the town.
Are you
Whether-
talking about for damage to the road while
No,
construction might be going on?
no.
Oh, okay.
More looking farther down the road.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I can predict certain things. This will be one of them. The previous landowner used to call me 3 or 4 times every summer to grade that road. Now, that's somebody that lived there for 35 years. We sell those lots to somebody for out of town, or like Dennis said, somebody in this room. It isn't gonna matter. My phone's gonna blow up. That I can assure you. It's bumpy, it's wavy. There's potholes. Yeah, it's a dirt road. Well, yeah, I grade it, and I think the people who live on that road will tell you. I grade that thing 3 or 4 times a year. We shape it up the best we can, but dirt roads are maintenance. So you're gonna increase the volume of traffic on that road. It's gonna increase the maintenance cost on that road. So some provision, whatever that provision is, we can talk about it some more, some provision has to be put in place as relief. Because a $345,000 road budget goes really fast.
Yeah.
So
You know, if you want, the next meeting, I can have Mike Vignali here. He can show you some of the thoughts he has. I don't think paving's gonna make sense, because it's gonna be a drastic cost. And the landowner shouldn't absorb all that cost. There's gonna be a piece of it, maybe where in front of the houses that are being built. Of course, not the whole road, because that's not fair. I mean, all of this is a give and take situation, and it all has to be fair. But something needs to be done, and something needs to be looked at. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Rowden, do you have something?
So I want to just,
You know, my name's Rosemary.
Excuse me, identify yourself, please.
My name's Rosemary Hewson. Rosemary Hewson. I live on North Main Street. And my concern about the road is also, you know, we talk about the UPS trucks and the school trucks, but what about the fire engines and ambulances and things like that? And I know, I have a family that's been developing a lot in North Carolina, and the developers there have to give a certain amount of money back to the town to help pay for roads and new schools, because you get 5 new houses, if each family has 2.5 kids, the next thing you know, we're gonna have to build another school. So, I think as the planning board, you guys should think about ways that you can get developers to help put money into the town for these
I do need
expenses.
to let you know that every time a house is built, there's an impact fee that gets paid to the town from the developer for each house. And that goes towards the schools.
And the roads.
No, it's
I don't know about it goes, I know
just goes to
the
the school.
road,
It only
the
goes to the
schools,
school.
Goes to the school.
And I can tell you that the school system is expecting to see a 33% decrease in student population over the next 10 years.
And
So,
then-
I mean, the student population from 5 houses is not going to,
Yeah, but it's just trickles, you know, it's like 5 houses here, another 5 over here. You know, it's just something to think
considering we're
about.
looking at a 33% decrease in we've already seen a 22% decrease in student population. I mean, in 10 years, we're going to be at half of the student population that we were at 6 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so our taxes will go down?
It should.
Thank you.
just so everyone, impact fees can only be utilized by the town if the town can prove that it is growing at a rate to use those impact fees, whether it be for school or transportation networks or for wastewater treatment plants, that type of thing. Newton and all surrounding communities are not currently growing, and therefore any impact fees that are collected actually after 6 years end up being given back to developers or property owners, because the towns are not growing at the rate that they have to be able to utilize those impact fees. So even if Newton itself had a transportation system impact fee, likely wouldn't be able to use it for a project like this. That doesn't mean that off-site improvements or a set amount of money couldn't be put towards maybe improving the road in this section. But if that's something the board's interested in looking into further, you should definitely have this be reviewed by your town engineer, and I would recommend continuing this hearing,
Okay.
if that's something you're leaning towards.
Mr. Bavaro.
While we're talking about the economic aspect of this, to clarify, anybody that may be watching or sitting in this room, it's $183 a year per household that goes into the highway budget. That's for snow plowing, that's for the whole kit. It's $183 a household. So if you put, that's it. Uh-huh. You should sit in my seat. So, and I'm only bringing that up because there may be somebody there bringing up the impact fees and everything else that, you know, the 5 houses or 6 houses might offset the maintenance cost on that road. Yeah, not happening.
Thank you.
It looks like we still have some questions. I do believe that we need to get, I didn't.
Feedback from the town engineer?
Yes.
Yeah?
So I could make a suggestion too, as far as, I heard Mr. Pavero talk about grading the road 3 times, maybe 4 times a year. Obviously, when the work is being done on the roadway, there'll be traffic going in there, so I'm sure something could be worked out with Mr. Fitzgerald as far as maintenance, so during the times that over the year or 2 years or whatever that the homes are being built, that he would be able to put money aside for further grading of the road, and they could work that out, whether it's an extra 2, 3, 4 times a year that the road gets graded. That's something that could be, that's part of what could be worked out as far as maintenance of the road during the construction process. As far as meeting with the town engineer, I think that might be a good thing, to get his input and be able to work with the selectmen as far as coming up with a time frame when the road is gonna get paved. And if there is something that's worked out in a short period of time where the road is gonna get paved, then maybe that's something, a contribution could be made toward that. But to say that someday it's gonna be paved, whether it's 20 or 30 years from now, that's pretty hard to say that at this point in time, establishing a percentage cost from someone who's trying to build 5 homes there, when the homes are gonna be there for 20 or 30 years, generating taxes, and possibly not having many children in the school system, as Mr. Doggett's talking about. So, I mean, that number's gonna be a hard thing to come up with, as far as a long-term major improvement with the road system. Can there be some improvements to the road? Maybe that's something that certainly can be worked out, and with the town engineer's help, and Mr. Fitzgerald could work something out. So, I'm sure that's something that could be done also. And
I was looking more towards seeing if the town engineer had any feedback for us for like a bond for that section of the road like we did on Heath Street, and while the construction is going on, and if there's damage to the road, and then that bond money would pay for that portion that was damaged. So that's why we need to get some feedback from the town engineer, I think. Ms. Rowden?
That's only a small piece of the problem.
Well, I know, but it's, I have to tell you that I don't think it's Mr. Fitzgerald's problem for paving the whole road. He's just worried about in front of his 5 houses right now, so.
So your road agent alluded to there are several options being explored through the town engineer as to what to do about this road. Some of them, I'm betting, don't include paving, but maybe in this, and I don't know, but maybe in this section of the road, there are some small improvements that could be done that perhaps that could be what is an off-site improvement that is done. It's not the long-term paving of the road.
Right.
Doesn't sound
Right.
like anybody wants. But that would be a much easier number
Right, absolutely,
to
yeah.
at least know what that is.
And I don't know the feasibility, but also even not just in front of these houses, but the widening the very narrow portion of the road. You know, so that there's, you know, like room for the school bus and the UPS truck to get by each other.
My suggestion is you get feedback from Mike Vignali about
Yeah.
the different options for this section of the road.
Right.
Right.
This is all we're concerned with right now, that this is because
And
the
then
rest of the road issue is, I believe, a selectman issue.
And you're correct. But clarify what I said a little while ago. Through the boards and the selectmen in a group, a decision has to be made. Do you want to pave it? I don't think it'll ever get that far. It's above my pay grade. I can only give you my suggestion. But that has to be established. And we're certainly not looking to have Todd incur the cost of the whole road. That's not trying to be implied here by any stretch of the imagination. But we have to come up with a game plan. Once we establish what that game plan is, and paving may not be it, but we need to establish that, then the percentage of what is in front of the lots that Todd has can be dealt with. If it's widened, even if it's gonna be paved, you can do all the subbase, you can do whatever drainage, you can do whatever widening. No different when you do 101, a highway. 125, they do it in phases. But you have to know the beginning and end of what you're doing
don't do it in pieces. Don't put the blinders on it, oh, we're gonna do this, and you haven't looked at the whole thing from end to end. So we need to do that post haste.
A couple of comments, if I can. First of all, Mr. Pavero, what would there be left of your budget if the selectmen looked at you and said pave Currierville Road? Would your
All of you
budget
guys
this year
have
cover it?
snowplows? Do you all have snowplows? Okay, because you're gonna be plowing the road then, because the budget will be gone.
That's exactly what I wanted to dramatize, was the fact that to pave the entire
Yeah, no, it's gonna
Currierville
be a
Road.
significant expense that, we don't want to eat up any more time tonight trying to discuss that, because that's a much broader,
Another question that I do have is, I actually traveled over Currierville Road the other day, and I've noticed that there are more sections paved than I ever remember growing up. Needless to say, I don't have to travel Currierville Road very often.
which road?
Currierville
Nothing on
Road,
Currierville paved.
there is a section of Currierville paved from the triangle.
Oh, it just goes in 50 feet. That's been like that for... Yeah, there's a small transitional phase that comes in, but they're short. They're 50 feet.
Well, it appears to go up to the end of somebody's driveway. I didn't turn around to find out.
I think it's, whatever the case may be, they're short. And it's only a transition. That's all those were put in before my
okay.
time.
I was just wondering, because it's been that long since I've had to travel down Currierville Road. Needless to say, Currierville Road is not a transition road that anybody takes to get from any point to any point, other than,
When I grade it,
Yeah.
right after I'm done grading it, and these people that live on it will tell you, it turns into a much higher traveled road. What slows them down, sucks for them, slows them down are the potholes.
oh, okay.
I mean, again, I don't have any crystal ball, but I can tell you this, you pave that road,
Yeah,
get ready. Because that'll be a cut through by a whole bunch of people. A whole bunch
however,
of,
as it is in its present condition, I honestly don't see it being a regularly traveled road, except for those who are desperate enough to take it.
no, no, and that's correct. That's why, let's get Mike McNally in here.
Yeah.
Look at some options. One of them is to improve the road base, like they do up north, that are dirt roads.
Okay.
But you invest money into that sub-base, drainage materials underneath, shape it, because that road is a dug-in road box. Almost 3/4 of that is dug in. It's not, there's no relief off to the sides of the road. So we need to look at that, and if that is an acceptable option, then we do those upgrades, do it in front of the houses that are being built now, widen it up a little bit, because I tried to widen Gale Village Road last year.
Oh, I know.
That didn't go well.
Yeah. At least on this road, the town owns most of the land on one side.
Yeah, on one side, pops back and forth, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's all I got to say tonight. Bedtime. See you, thank you.
Well, it looks like we're going to maybe continue this to get some feedback from the town engineer.
Before we move on,
Yes.
I don't have any other questions about this. I mean, my concerns with the road, but I don't know if any of the other board members have other issues that we want to at least bring up so that we know what else
That
we're
would be a
going to need to
good
talk
idea.
about in the future.
Okay. Anybody else on the board have any issues?
Other issues?
I already voiced my opinion about retaining trees along the front, and I would honestly like to see, if you look on your page 2, you can see the setback along the edge of the road. I would like to see that doubled in width for a no-cut.
Because this is a scenic road?
Right.
Okay.
That sort of takes it right back. On some of them, it just sort of kisses the edge of the
Where the septic.
septic
yeah,
reserves.
Okay.
I mean, of course, you're gonna take out anything that's dead, you know, large and
You may
dead.
want to wait to see what the town engineer says about that,
Yeah,
okay? Because his input is very important. And
Absolutely.
we've already heard a number of issues tonight. We certainly will talk about that with Mr. Fitzgerald. And if there's other conclusions that we can come up, so that at the next meeting, we can hopefully resolve all the issues and concerns that the board has. And we also have to get state subdivision approval also.
Right.
So we have to wait for that, so.
I just wanted to bring that up now rather
Oh, yeah,
than
no, and.
throwing it out at the
All I'm
last
saying,
minute.
before you come up with a definition of limits of trees or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I think that hearing from the town engineer might be important, getting
Right.
his input on that too, and then we can maybe incorporate that with whatever he says.
Right. Anybody else on the board have anything to say? I just want to say that I appreciate the comments about the road and the condition and paving and not paving and whatever. I just feel personally that I don't think it would be fair to this property owner to make him wait until the town decided what to do with the entire road for him to be able to do something with his property. That's all. That's just my comment. Yes.
Just one option that I've seen taken in other towns when this has come up is that instead of, waiting for the town to know everything you're gonna do with this road for the next 50 years, some minor improvements, if those can be made, or some maybe substantial improvements to that section, if we know what those really minimum improvements that are needed are, or a percentage, at least an amount could be established that could only be used, almost like an impact fee, that could only be used for that improvement. So when the town is ready to go and do some work, you can do it more comprehensively, but then that's the off-site improvement. It's just an amount of money that's established. Now, you want that to be fair and equitable, and no, you don't want Todd to pay to have the entire road improved.
Right, or to wait until the town decides to make a
Exactly.
decision on what to do. That's, I don't feel like that would be fair, so, okay.
Just so that you know, my feeling is Todd should only be doing what he is developing. Any improvements should not go beyond that point. For him, he shouldn't pay for any improvements beyond his.
Oh, you're talking about in front of his lots? Right, and I think that's what we were discussing too. I'm sorry? Oh, go ahead, say it again.
Well, I said that the only thing I'm saying is the improvements Todd should not do beyond his project. At the end of his project, he shouldn't be doing anything further down the road. He should only be doing improvements in front of his projects. That's my feeling.
Okay, so,
So, one comment I have is that, it sounds like in the road agent obviously is in a bind on trying to stretch every dollar he can from the town road budget. And this is an area where it needs work and it needs improvements. And Mr. Fitzgerald is willing to work with him and coming up with maintenance during the construction process over the next year or two on whatever it takes for additional work on grading the road. And also meeting with the town engineer and the road agent for improvements in that area. I'm sure that they'll work something out, and Mr. Fitzgerald is willing to take care of things that are in that immediate area, short of paving that section of roadway. So, based on that, I'm sure we could work something out. We could still do a conditional approval on tonight, based on having state subdivision approval, and based on working with the town engineer and the road agent on coming up with an agreed-upon maintenance and improvements on that section of road.
how does the board feel about that, or do you feel like we need to?
I want to
Feedback
know what
from
the
the town
improvements are
engineer.
going to be before I vote.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to get some feedback from the town engineer
Right.
first.
I mean, I just thought that, I didn't know how the
Yeah.
board would feel about that,
Right.
but, obviously, that's something that really is negotiating between the road agent, town engineer, and what's acceptable for Mr.
No, the road agent, yes, as an elected official, the town engineer works for the town. And this is the board that actually has jurisdiction on what we can request for any possible offsite improvement. So we can't abrogate that authority and say, yeah, we're just going to, whatever you guys decide.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I just thought I'd ask. I didn't know how the board, I mean, I didn't know what the board, how the board felt, and that's a
Right.
reasonable answer, so I accept that.
I mean, I'm sure that the town engineer's already seen this plan, so we can ask him to give us some feedback, and then I don't think there's a problem if he wanted to meet with you and ask you any other questions, that, I think that would be
Yeah.
fine too. He could contact you if he needed to, all
I
right?
think that would be nice if it could be done prior to your next meeting, if this gets continued to whatever your next meeting, so that we could hopefully resolve this at the next meeting.
I believe we can continue it to the next meeting. I don't know what the town engineer's schedule is, whether he would have time to do that. We'd have to
But
check that out.
considering that our next meeting is a month from now, because the second
Right.
Tuesday is election day.
Oh, that's right, then there'll be plenty of
So
time.
we're not going to meet again for 4 weeks.
That's right.
Like
So
I
there'll be
said, that
plenty
should
of
give them
time
plenty
then,
of time to
probably,
work
yeah.
something out by then.
Okay, do you have the date of the next meeting?
September 25th.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
I'll make
So-
a motion to
You
continue.
need to say a little louder.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to September 25th.
I have a
Second.
I would like to add something before we do this. Another thing that you should consider is installing all of the electrical power to these new houses underground. I've seen so many houses lose power in this part of, we're not originally from here, we're from Texas, where the power stays up all the time. But it doesn't here. And you can partially solve this by putting the power underground from the street to the house.
Right. We can
Take
ask,
that in consideration, yeah.
yeah, we
The
can,
poles, just have to extend the poles. I met with Unitil out on the property already, so we're gonna have to extend the poles down the street. So like that may affect some tree cutting as well. I have to pay for poles going down the street.
And they design it, the electric company designed it, we don't get involved in any part of that design. So that's up to the power company and what trees they have to take, so.
The power stops at 23 Curryville, the house there, so that, from that pole forward down the street. They wanna,
Todd, I need you to come up to the podium.
I
Sorry.
believe they want to run it from the last pole, at 23 Curryville. I had met with Kathy from Unitil out there, and that's what she had told me.
Okay,
So that's on me.
okay. All right. So I have a motion and,
A second.
a second from Mr. Zott. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so this is continued until September 25th.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and for your interest.
Let's see, Mr. Doucette's here.
Yes, it's here. Okay.
That's the Doucettes
Yeah.
that came in right.
Right. Hi. Sorry you had to wait. You were on first, but... That's okay. We were a few minutes later. Okay, so you shuffled to second. Okay, so we have a non-binding discussion with Mr. Doucette, 44 Bear Hill Road, for the condition of notice of decision dated January 14th, 2014. So if you would, we're just going to have a discussion now and let us know what it is that you wanted from the board.
Okay, well, as you can see, the condition 1 on the original decision was that the existing home on the property was to be torn down prior to issuing an occupancy permit on the new home.
Right.
And it causes some time frame issues, number one. We are, at this point, hoping to be in this winter.
The schedule's been crazy, as you can see from the date of the original decision, so we're still running a little behind what we'd like to be. But we would really like to offer the house, which I've been in contact with the fire chief, to them for either to burn it down or to, at the very least, use it as training. And I believe maybe the fire chief was in contact with Gail and had sort of, you know,
Right.
relayed that.
He
in-
did show he did have a note for his interest, yes.
Yeah, so we don't have an answer whether they'll actually burn it down yet, but in any case, he expressed great interest in using it as training. So what we would really, I think, would work for us best would be possibly to get this changed and get 6 months after occupancy. Give them time to utilize the house. I mean, they obviously can't utilize it till we're in the new house. So that would give them, I would think, plenty of time to do their training and/or burn it down at some point. And then at that point, within 6 months, we would be able to, well, the house would be remediated before they would go in anyways. All that, you know, anything that was hazardous material in it would be gone. But at that point, they could do what they want with it, and then within 6 months, we would make sure it's down and gone.
Are you living in the house in front right now, at this time?
At this time, no. Well, this summer, we're in a camper. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Brenda's-
somebody is living
Oh,
in that
yes.
house right now?
Yeah. We rent in the winter and, you know, kind of spend some time there.
And that's an issue too, is the transition time, have a place.
Yeah.
That's part of the issue too, is her, us not getting an occupancy until she's out of the house, but we need that transition period of where she's gonna go between leaving that house and moving in, and being ready for her to move into the new home.
What was the plan 4 years ago when we gave you this approval?
Well, it didn't seem like a big obstacle at the time. Nicole and I were living in a home in Haverhill, but since then, we're not. And so we rent here and there, and
The other plan was that we couldn't have an occupancy until her house was torn down.
Right, and I remember at that time, it didn't seem like that was going to be a problem.
that's true. I think we just didn't put a lot of thought into the transition of it, and,
I mean, I remember we talked about it a lot,
Right,
about that
right.
transition. So the
Right.
fact that you say you didn't think about it,
Yeah.
We
I
also
mean,
had a home at the time in
it was
Haverhill.
a major issue when we gave you the
Correct. We also had a home in Haverhill at the time that she could have stayed with us in the
Right.
process of us leaving there to go here, which we don't
Yeah.
have now, so.
no.
The other question I've got is that this notice of decision was going to expire on July 14th, 2014, unless you asked for an extension. Did you ever ask for an extension?
I don't believe so. Following approved.
Why did we do that?
Subject to following conditions.
Because that's
Oh,
standard
6 months.
procedure for.
So we
that's
gave them 6
conditional.
months, so that's the
Oh, six-
standard language.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they never
So-
came, I mean, I understand things change.
Oh, well, no, it took
but-
him
but it-
longer.
But it's been 4 years.
Well,
and
it took him that long to
Well,
get the house
well,
built.
actually, yeah, would we go back to like when the original permit was pulled, or what? Because that may have been, could have very well been in that window.
Yeah,
then-
the original notice of decision was January 14th, 2014.
Right.
That would have been,
And it says that it was going to expire on July 14th unless you specifically asked for an extension.
to pull the building permit to start construction on the second home is what they came in for. It's more of a compliance with the decision, is that the house that's proposed to be torn down before the occupancy permit is
Issue.
provided.
Right, and
So-
that's, right.
It's a post-approval condition. So the fact that they pulled a building permit before that expiration means that they have satisfied.
I'm pretty sure it was pulled
Yeah.
prior to that. I'd have to go back.
Yeah,
As far as changing this one condition, if you're leaning towards it, to be able to do it, you would actually have to re-notice.
Right, we have to have a
that-
public hearing.
Yep, it's called a compliance hearing. It's the same process as a general hearing. It's publicly noticed to butters with the phrase, to amend this portion of the decision.
And I know, I've got, some reservations because everything sort of keeps sliding and how to really, if we allow them the building permit before the house is down, we need some kind of insurance that it's really going to happen.
A bond or something.
Or something. We're going to need I'm going to need something to guarantee that it is going to happen in the time frame that we're talking about.
A temporary occupancy permit could be issued. I don't know how often.
I
you
don't think the building
actually-
permit, I don't think the building department
have
has
those.
temporary,
It is something under their authority they're allowed to do.
Yeah,
Whether or not
I haven't
Newton
seen that they've ever done that or not, but.
does that.
I think that maybe, the fact that the fire department will be in there basically burning it up, or
Well-
maybe not in whole, but,
I've spoken to the fire department already, and for them, when I spoke to the fire chief, he said for them to even think about doing a burn,
yeah.
because it's a state road, there's lots of paperwork with the state, there has to be people out at the road that are, he says that whole process could take a year. He said, so that probably won't happen because I'm pretty sure that the board is not leaning towards doing it for a year. But I asked him about like a 3-month time frame. Could he still do some sort of training or whatever in it, even if it's not a burn? He said, yes, that would a 3-month would work for him as far as being able to utilize the building for training. And I think that kind of time frame might be a little more palatable to the board rather than a year or 6 months. I don't know.
Either way, it's, once the fire department's done with it, the building will no longer be habitable.
Correct, and it still would be your responsibility to tear it down.
Right,
Right.
that's
Okay.
correct, yeah.
Right.
We totally.
I was just going to say, then goes from a dwelling to an attractive nuisance.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
We-
And we don't want it in our front yard
That's
either,
why
so.
I'm leaning to agree with Mr. Hamel with the idea that there would have to be some sort of a small bond posted, so that if for some reason 6 months from now, there is still the shell of a building sitting on your front lawn,
Yeah.
the town has to, it can come in and say, yes, knock everything in, haul away what needs to be hauled away, fill it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that something that we need, like, the town engineer to do, look at?
Yeah,
It's
'cause
sort of
the
a,
town
We
engineer,
need to set an amount.
He could-
Somebody's got to figure that out.
That would require the town engineer.
Right.
But I agree with, obviously, we have to have a public hearing.
right.
Keep in
I mean,
mind, this is a non-binding consultation.
Correct,
hearing.
right. This is a
Yeah.
non-binding consultation,
Right.
But we're
But
just sort
it-
of talking about
Right.
possible ways that we could go.
right.
We know the process for, that we would have to have a public hearing with notice.
Right.
And even if the Doucette's came in tomorrow, Gail would be having it someplace the end of October? If the Doucette's came in with all their paperwork on Thursday, when would be the earliest we would be able to have a? October.
Mid-October? Okay. Because you understand, like you did the first time when you came in, there would be a fee for noticing in the paper and a fee for noticing abutters.
Okay.
And we'd also need some sort of, we call it NEPR, it's money put in a fund, because we would need to pay the town engineer to go out there and give us an assessment of what it would cost as a bond, is that what you said that was? To make sure that house was
You
gone.
want to know what it would cost to demolish.
Right,
Yeah,
so
a
we need,
demolition bond, I
right, so,
guess.
So we would have to do that. So
Yeah,
the earliest then you'd be able to come in for your public hearing would be in October then.
Right.
The September 25th date wouldn't work. It would meet,
We would need time to know,
We need time, I mean, I don't know.
but to notice is 10 days. You need to have an application, which this is a fairly minor application, 21 days. I mean, I realize that that's next week, but it should be able to get in the paper for the 25th.
for the 25th of September?
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, where, you got your calendar?
So the papers usually require it 15 days so or for
No.
actual noticing.
In order to get on the September 25th, the
Yeah.
deadline is Thursday the 30th. You need to have your application
Ha-
in,
have, yeah, the application in with,
for the application fees.
Okay, so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is a pretty minor application. It's not like a
Right.
site plan where you need a lot of information.
All right.
I know, but those are based on the amount of, the lead time for notice in the paper.
Right.
Right, but I'm just saying is that there is time if you're able to
Yeah.
turn around some paperwork in a few days.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, we can do it, yeah.
Okay, and then you could let them know, look at the last one and know approximately how much the newspaper notice is and the notice, the abutters notices, right? So you can give them an amount for that.
Yep.
And then,
How much for the NEPR?
how much for the NEPR?
Right.
That's when the legal notice and everything comes out, so. When you come in Thursday night, I can let you know exactly. It's a $100 application fee, and then the NEPR, I believe, is $250.
Okay?
Okay,
All right.
so 2 for 3.
And then it's whatever the abutters notices too, that
That's
cost.
part of the NEPR,
Okay, yeah,
But I'm saying it's probably gonna, are you gonna have Mike Vignali come in and, it's probably gonna be more money than $250, or Mike Vignali.
Oh,
our town
I would
engineer.
ask the town engineer to give you an estimate as to what demolition costs are for an existing single-family home.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You could just ask him
He
that, maybe
shouldn't
we
need-
won't need
Yeah,
him to.
shouldn't need to go on
versus
site
him
at all.
actually making a trip
Right, yeah,
out.
ask him that, yeah, that would be good. Okay,
Okay, and then, so we would give you, the town a bond of some sort for that number?
Right.
Yeah,
well, you would just give us a check right now for this, for the noticing and
Yeah, yeah.
everything. Yeah,
If a condition was that you have to put a bond for the cost of demolishing the house if you don't do it in a certain time frame, that would take place after you put in your application, when you actually have your public hearing. So that wouldn't be until at least September 25th.
gotcha.
right,
Right.
okay. Okay,
Thursday, I'm there late, 12 to 8.
12 to 8. We'll see you
Okay.
early Thursday.
All right.
All right?
okay, sounds good.
Awesome, thank you all, folks.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Okay. Okay. We're on stormwater management. Where's my piece of paper? Are we on number 3?
Yep.
We are, given
Okay,
that the conservation.
ladies, did you want to come up? Can they sit at the front of the table there? Is that okay?
I suppose so,
Yeah,
there's nobody
why
in the
don't you
audience.
Sit up there at the front of the table, and then you can hear. We're just going over this proposed stormwater management plan to be included into the ordinance.
Do you want me to give
Yeah,
kind
you-
of a
if you will do that,
recap of the
please.
status? All right. So, in part to comply with the MS4 stormwater permit, but also for just general water quality maintenance, these stormwater regulations are intended to help mitigate any pollutants that are going on from stormwater and help to slow down any runoff coming from, any additional runoff coming from sites that are developed or being proposed to have additional development. What the planning board has discussed thus far is to start with just doing site plans. So that would be any commercial development or any multifamily residential development. So it wouldn't be for like the single-family lots we were talking about earlier. So start with site plan regulations, and then maybe move on to subdivision regulations, and possibly with that, just when there's a road being proposed. And the general parameters of this are that when someone comes in and they are doing, so let's just say it's a blank or an empty lot for ease, they're doing something where they're disturbing, and not just final footprint, but disturbing over 10,000 square feet of area, so about a quarter acre, they would actually have to develop a stormwater management plan. They would have to do the calculations as to what is the pre and post-development runoff. And then based on the results of that, if they have so much stormwater that is going to be an increase, they would actually have to use what are best management techniques to treat it on site. Now, that doesn't mean that there would never be any runoff. If there's already natural runoff occurring because of the slope or a waterway, then that would be allowed to continue. And one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is actually the redevelopment. So when someone already has a developed site, and they want to add in, 20,000 more square feet to what they already have developed, that they would have to treat the new stormwater runoff and then a percentage of the already developed stormwater runoff. So that's kind of the broad brush stroke.
Right. And we're working ahead of the game because this is going to be, when is this going to be due? By 2019?
So per the MS4 permit, that these need to be in place within 2 years, so.
And we're trying to get ahead of the game.
Yeah, so establishing it sooner means that there's just more stormwater being treated. The only real waterways in Newton that are, at least under MS4 permit, that are subject are really Country Pond, and there's a couple of brooks whose names are escaping me right now. But Little River is actually not in the MS4 area. It is impaired, and what it's impaired for, I can't remember off the top of my head. But you do have some waterways that are impaired for stormwater-related runoff.
We did go through the slideshow.
Yeah, and I apologize, I don't remember every town's water bodies off the top of my head, but that's the basic intent.
Okay.
All right.
All right, good.
All right, so last time we stopped at section 3 under elements.
Right, we're on general
And I can
performance
send you guys a copy
criteria,
of
right?
this, so you have it. I apologize, I don't have any more for this evening. So, yeah.
Page 4.
Yeah, page 4, element C. So general performance criteria is exactly what it sounds like. How well does some of this technology or stormwater treatment, how well does it have to perform and under what conditions? So the basic idea is that you're using best management practice and that all stormwater runoff generated from new development or redevelopment shall not be discharged directly into jurisdictional water bodies or wetlands. So I'm just going to use tonight's application as an example. If a commercial development was being proposed across that, what was the original lot, they couldn't just pipe their stormwater down into that intermittent stream. They need to have some sort of treatment or overland flow that will help to treat either the pollutants that are in there, the suspended solids, or a variety of other pollutants that could be in stormwater.
You want to start on line 1 and we'll,
If it's just typos,
no.
I'll get them from you, but other things, sure.
No. There are just two major ones. And the first thing is, all applications shall apply site design practices to reduce the generation of stormwater. Are we referring to best practices? Are we referring to any specific site design, practices?
Well, they're going to be designed differently for different sites. That's why it's phrased like
Okay.
that. We can clarify it.
Okay. And the only other thing is municipal stormwater management system. Isn't that normally for larger towns that have sewers?
Nope. You guys have roadside swales that deal with stormwater. You have some catch basins in town. You have, I believe, 1 or 2 rain gardens. They might not be municipally owned, but you have some cisterns. You have stormwater infrastructure. You don't
Okay.
have a combined sewer stormwater system.
Okay. And the others are just grammatical. There's a comma missing after capture, get rid of the word and the word the.
Wow, they really did miss a lot of commas, didn't they?
And the word "and" between minimize and discharge means, should be the. I was channeling Roger.
No, I think you were channeling you.
So the very top line on page 5 is actually kind of the key to this whole thing, is that developments shall provide adequate management of stormwater runoff, and keep in mind, adequate management is only for a certain threshold of storms. We are not talking about the Patriots' Day flood. We are not talking about the Mother's Day flood. Those were 500-year storm events, if not greater in some areas. So there is still even in a natural environment that normally can infiltrate smaller storms, under the right conditions and the right amount of rain, there will still naturally be runoff from large storms. So it's really key to provide adequate management of stormwater runoff. It doesn't mean everything. And prevent discharges from stormwater runoff from creating or contributing to water quality impairments. So that's that MS4 piece, is that you are not, the town is not increasing its responsibility for any water quality impairments that are going into rivers or streams or lakes. Doesn't mean that it's not happening, but you're trying to stop any further developments. Going down through, C is really just best management of how you design stormwater infrastructure. You want to maximize flow paths, you want to use the best management practices, maximize infiltration, because infiltration is going, if you can slow down the water and let it infiltrate into the ground, you're getting the benefit of recharging groundwater supplies for drinking water purposes, and you're also going to allow time for it to settle out, so like things like suspended solids will actually settle into the ground and not into the waterways. Going down to D, this is a little bit of a change from the general parameters for the stormwater structures. You actually have when there are emergency overflows, so that is, we get a very large or very intense rainstorm or precipitation event. A lot of things like detention basins will actually have, you've probably seen them before, pipes that are a little bit higher than the normal discharge point, and that's so if you have such an intense event, the water is at least being directed in the right direction. So you are not then putting it directly onto the road, as an example. And this is not even trying to treat it. This is just dealing with the volume of water you can get from large storm events. So that's why this is a 100-year, 24-hour storm event, whereas the infrastructure we were talking about previously only went up to a 50-year, 24-hour storm event.
So the emergency overflow is designed to handle a 100-year storm.
It is designed to allow the water to flow in the correct direction. It is not designed to treat that volume of water.
Right, because it's flowing over the surface and it's not getting it infiltrated at all then.
Right, so stormwater infrastructure that's meant to treat up to, say, a 50-year storm, when it rains and it's within that, less than that 50-year storm, it can treat that water and get out the 80% of the nitrogen or allow time for it to settle and the suspended solids settle out. An emergency overflow is just trying to deal with the volume and not have it directed back onto a parking lot, back towards a foundation. It's trying to direct it in the path where it's going to basically cause the least harm. That in general should be overflow, and it should be onto a grassy area or naturally. It can't be directly into a waterway. But that doesn't mean it's going to be as effective in treatment of the water as it would be under a smaller storm event. The big thing with that is that it's pretty infeasible. It can be done, but to actually design a treatment system for much higher than a 50-year storm is very cost prohibitive and generally can't be done on most sites.
And it's probably overkill if you're only going to have one of those things every once in a
So,
while.
You get a 1% chance of it happening at any particular time.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. It's an incorrect term to use 100-year storm events is what we
It's
use.
not, a 1% chance is not that small.
Correct. I mean, we have had 100-year storms fairly frequently, and that's actually one of the reasons why, in number E, utilizing the most recent precipitation data, because we're getting more frequent storm events, so that as we get more frequent storm events, the threshold of the amount of rain that it takes for it to be a 100-year storm kind of goes up. You might remember that one slide I showed of the town hall using the current precipitation data that you guys require versus the newer, and it was about a 2.5-inch rain volume difference, and that was just using a 100-year, 24-hour storm event on the town hall property, so that's a pretty large.
That's why I still think that we ought to require them to treat for 100-year storms.
I'm happy to have the town engineer give you an opinion of whether that's a feasible.
He might like it too. I only have one language thing in that C, and that is under Roman numeral 3.
Okay.
Retention of and discharge to fully vegetated areas. We need to put the word stormwater in there, retention of stormwater.
I think it's implied, but I can add it, it's fine.
Well, otherwise it's not even a full phrase.
On
Oh,
section,
should it go after discharge?
Retention of and discharge.
Of
Then you have to
dis-
have
of storm-
of
yeah.
stormwater.
Yeah.
It fits perfectly well, retention of stormwater and discharge to fully vegetated areas. It just linguistically makes sense.
at a previous meeting, we decided we'd cross out these websites.
Yes, I already have that noted.
Section E's already done?
It's not done in that I haven't put all of the changes in, but
Right.
it is noted that I will take that out.
Very good. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to point out in F, so just stormwater management practices involving bio retention and vegetative cover, that can include what people most think of as a rain garden. They can be very large in scale. They can look more like man-made wetlands. There's a phrase on the third line that says that detailed must be provided about who will manage and maintain this vegetation. Typically, that would be the property owner is the one who is responsible. The only caveat to that is that there are times where a property owner may turn over some stormwater infrastructure, cisterns being the most common, and catch basins sometimes, where it would become the town's responsibility. That's one of the reasons to have this put in, so that at least you know it is designed, and that would be worked out during a site plan and subdivision application as to whether or not the town was willing to accept that stormwater infrastructure. There may be a reason that the town actually wants it, because then it really knows it's going to be maintained, quite frankly. But typically, the maintenance would be on the property owner.
And shouldn't it say that because an assumption that the town may or may not take over?
No. So the reason it says it the way this is, who will maintain, is because there are those few exceptions where it might be a property owner, a homeowners association, or the town. That's why in this, it's left to be a little bit vague. When you put in your maintenance and operation plans, and that's something that we kind of get into more detail as we go through, that's where you can put on the responsibility that the property owner has to go and maintain and inspect. The town can establish an escrow in perpetuity for the town engineer to annually go out. And that's probably not the way you'll want to go, but that's when we'll get into who is responsible for maintaining, who is responsible for inspecting, and then what's the check to make sure that inspection and maintenance is happening. So those are all part of the discussion as we get farther on. The one other thing in F is that it says the use of native plantings for things like rain gardens appropriate for site conditions is strongly encouraged. I would recommend that the use of native plantings be required. There are plants throughout New England that are able to treat stormwater. There is no real reason why a non-native plant should be used. It also increases the benefits for habitat on a very micro scale.
I have no problem with that, because
No, I like required.
So you should, instead of strongly encourage, you want it to be required. Okay.
Well, so it should be only the use of native.
Yeah, it would just be the use of native plants appropriate for this site are required. So blueberry bushes, yes. Peach trees, no.
I'll catch up with you later on the language
That's, yeah,
changes.
that's fine.
Great.
Do we want to continue?
Yep. Yeah, why don't we do 4, and then we can stop maybe at element D.
Okay. So spill prevention, control, and countermeasures. That's basically a fancy way for saying that if you have a hazardous substance, you need to let the town know what kind, and this is for existing properties and new properties, what the hazardous substances are that are over 5 gallons, how they're stored, where they're stored, if there was a spill, what your plan is to clean it up, and that gets worked out with the fire chief. So this would not apply to a lot of businesses. It might apply in very small scale to some of them. Most smaller businesses, unless they're an automotive type business, aren't going to have hazardous substances of a quantity that this would fall under. So this will apply in some cases, but not in most.
So,
In the truest sense of the word, though, wouldn't it apply to heating oil?
No.
Why not? Hazardous substance over 5 gallons.
I'm sorry, in a commercial setting, yes. So when you have that, when you have like an outdoor oil tank, that's when you get stored where you have to have secondary containment up to 110% of whatever the tank is, and it has to be covered, so it's not having stormwater, or I'm sorry, any precipitation falling on it. So yes, oil tanks do. It just depends on how they're configured, and especially if they're outside.
now, for us, should we not, rather than saying, such as the fire chief, et cetera, shouldn't we specify, in our case, it probably would be the fire chief, and just leave it like that? And
We actually have an emergency management office.
Yeah, I mean, that is,
is that who you
that
want?
is not your fire chief, though. It's
No.
there, yeah.
No. But it does need to be "or" in the middle there.
But,
It says such as.
yeah, and that's what, but shouldn't we specify,
Yeah.
if it should be the emergency management person and not the fire chief, the regulation should say who, not say,
Yeah.
you report to somebody, but don't tell them who they've got to go to.
Well, but if the fire chief happens to be on vacation, maybe it's the emergency person that they need to talk to. So,
Actually, it would be, shall submit to the local official who shall be the fire chief or emergency management.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, I think you gotta,
Actually, the reason for it to be the fire chief and not the emergency management is that the fire chief under fire code is dealing with the
Right.
hazardous
and
substances.
that's what I was,
So, yeah, we would definitely change that to the fire chief or his designee.
I will say number 4 has the added benefit of drinking water protection.
my other question is, this also relates to existing facilities.
Yes, but
How do we get them to do it?
well, the only way it relates to existing facilities is when they come in for an amended site plan.
right.
That's how. They can't get their approved site plan unless they do this, or you grant them a waiver.
Pre-existing non-conforming, if they don't come before us, we can't.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be non-conforming, it's just pre-existing.
Well, it would, once this goes into,
I mean, there are other state laws that factor into how you deal with hazardous substances
Right.
that are beyond your control. But that's how, for the planning board, how you get them to comply with this.
Right.
I guess, why is that there?
which one?
The very beginning of 4. Any existing.
Because someone could be wanting to come in to add to their parking lot per se, but not actually be changing their business.
Well, maybe, can I say something? Maybe we need to just put changes to any existing or otherwise permitted use? Shall submit to the local, what do you think? Because that's what you're talking about, if they have changes
If
to an
they,
existing.
if they're having changes, the use of the property may not be changing, but the site may be changing. That's why this is phrased that way.
But that's why I'm saying, maybe if you put changes to any existing or otherwise permitted use.
But they wouldn't be coming before you for a site plan if there weren't changes going on.
Okay.
But that isn't what this says. Maybe it's just,
No, I understand.
Goofy
Every time I
language.
read this, it's like, how do we even know that they have something to have to report?
right, that was my, I mean, I understand what we're trying to get to, I just don't see that this says that. And I don't know how to say what
Well,
it is.
one of the ways that you know is that in A, disclosure statement describing the types, quantities, and storage locations of all regulated substances. This is requiring them to provide that information. No.
No.
They don't
What
like the
Roger
first, they
is
don't like
trying
this
to-
first paragraph right here underneath number 4.
We need, it needs to have some sort of trigger. Right at the moment, I own Doggett's Garage down on 108. And I also do painting, so I have 55-gallon drums of lacquer thinner.
Okay.
That would be a regulated substance in an amount greater than 5 gallons.
Yep. Are you coming before the planning board for a site plan?
No.
Or an amended site plan?
No.
Can't
Then
do
this
anything
then
about
this
it.
doesn't apply to you.
Okay, so.
But that doesn't say that. The way it says any existing needs to file.
Keep in mind that this falls under your general site plan. This is just a component of all of your site plan regulations. Any property in town that doesn't
okay.
conform to any number of your site plan regulations, you don't require, just because you adopt a new one, you don't go back to anything that's already existing and say, well, we just changed this, so you need to come into compliance.
Right.
That's what Roger was, I was trying to interpret what Roger was saying.
If you don't, all other things aside from like state laws with hazardous substances, if you don't have to come in for a site plan, if you don't meet the criteria for having to come in for a site plan or an amended site plan or a change of use, this does not apply.
Right.
So this wouldn't apply to any of Coleman McDonough's properties as they are currently approved.
Right.
Right.
If he comes in to do any change, for the most part, that's one of the reasons for people coming in for an amended site plan, why it's a big deal. It opens up all of these issues, and it gives you the opportunity to actually correct things if there are problems. This could be one of those problems.
Right.
So in terms of us, when someone comes in with a site plan, then just like they're required to get, a state approval, basically it's checkbox, you've got to certify that you submitted this to the fire chief. But we don't actually end up seeing
Well,
it.
that's usually one of the conditions that you would, I mean, if somebody was going to have some sort of a business, you would say, the fire chief has to go do an inspection, and he will find out whether you're storing your hazardous materials right, and if you have drums of paint or oil or whatever, that they're in a suitable container to be contained, so they won't go someplace. I mean, that's usually one of the,
So when someone comes before the town for just a driveway permit, a town driveway permit, you have regulations in here that dictate what the conditions are under which that driveway permit can be issued. Now, you have maybe given the approval for that subdivision saying, yep, but you gotta get a local driveway permit.
and that
The
doesn't
ac-
come before us.
that doesn't come before you, but the details of what the driveway permit requirements are in your site plan regulations and subdivision regulations.
Right, and they're followed by the town engineer who, I mean, not the town engineer, the road agent who gives out the driveway permits.
Correct. By
Right.
someone getting an approval of site plan regulations or subdivision regulations, unless you have given them a waiver, they have agreed to do everything to that specification unless they get a waiver, which is why when, the stormwater waiver that was granted this evening.
Right.
Now they don't have to do that stormwater requirement. But everything else, they do as of this point.
Right.
One thing that on this section, since we're basically putting the plan recording to go, or plan review to go to the fire chief, I think we need to have the fire chief look at this and find out if there's anything that's missing.
That's fine.
Who's going to forward it to the fire chief?
We all look at Gail.
Electronically.
Before,
So it's just spill prevention?
let's get through
Yeah.
all of this and make the changes that we're gonna make before sending
This
it to
section and-
Okay.
Mike. I mean, there's some specific questions certainly, but before sending it to the fire chief and the town engineer and conservation, so we can send it out to a variety of people, and very specific sections we can call it, we really need you to look at this.
Okay,
Okay, sounds good.
But let's get through the whole document first.
Yeah,
okay.
all right. And so then I think maybe we don't really need to talk too much about this number 4, because if we're going to have the fire chief look at this, he's the one who should tweak this part, I think.
I mean, you should know generally what this says.
Oh, yeah, well,
but-
yeah.
And the 3 towns I've done stormwater ordinances on, I've only ever seen this utilized twice in several years, so.
And usually this is just for, this would be for somebody who's like a big operation.
Not
wouldn't it?
necessarily, but generally more like an automotive type business.
No, actually, we have had things that would be
Or our-
covered by this.
Or our fuel
Yep.
storage
Vic-
area.
Yeah, Victoria,
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
well, it's
Free
now
fuel
it's
would-
Hafner's, but yeah.
Not in one of those situations, but we have actually, the fire department has responded to accidental chemical releases. If you remember, we now have a warrant article that was passed last year
Right.
that authorizes.
I mean, you could have a print shop open up in town that they may have enough hazardous substance to
Yep.
fall under this, but it's not gonna be every application.
Right. I think we could maybe stop here, and the next time start with element D again.
Is everybody gonna keep this with them until September 25th?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have all my notes.
So is this gonna be voted on, or is it just what the planning board?
So to adopt this, the planning board will have to have a public hearing. It will be noticed in the paper. It will not be voted on at town meeting, though. So this is just a site plan regulation, so it,
So it's just what the planning board adopts?
yes.
Right,
Right.
right. It's going to go into our
And generally,
regulations.
a planning board won't put a site plan regulation even forward to public hearing unless everyone's pretty much on board with it, so.
And you'll send us, after you make all your corrections?
Yeah, we can send a copy over for you guys to peruse, and if there are questions.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, where is my, there. Okay,
Have a good night.
have a nice evening, ladies.
Night now.
Reminder to people, in the next 30 days, do not lose your copies.
Right. Okay. Okay, board correspondence. Yep, do I have a vote on the minutes?
Motion to accept.
Second. With one minor correction.
Oops. Oh,
Yes.
We need to move Mr. Hamill's self-recusal down
Why?
under the beginning of the start of,
No, he recused himself before we started that.
I know, however, the way it reads is it sounds like Mr. Hamel recused himself from the discussion of stormwater management ordinance.
No, he recused himself from before this discussion, number 2.
Then he returned to the board.
And then he returned to the board afterwards.
Okay.
Did you not?
Yeah, no,
that is what he did.
his comment was basically whether you put my recusal before or
I
after
know,
the
but I
heading.
think
Yeah.
you did recuse
Yeah,
yourself
I-
before we
I-
even
I
opened
basically
that.
saw it on the next item on the agenda and left.
In that case, it needs to say Mr. Hamel recused himself for the duration of the next item on the agenda.
Why? We're saying he came back to the board.
Oh, I know it says that he came back to the board.
Okay,
It
do me a
just, it's
favor.
awkward
Just-
language.
Just move his recusal down past number 2. Just do discussion of the maintenance bond, do that he recused himself, and then do the rest of the paragraph.
It's cleaner.
Okay.
I wouldn't want somebody coming back who may be named on that next item and say that it's not clear.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Do all those in favor?
Aye.
With the adjustment? Thank you. Manifest. Okay. Okay, operating budget, telephone bill, $63.10.
Move to pay.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Todd, you
Unanimous?
second?
Yeah. NEPR expense, is this the noticing? This is the noticing for,
The abutter notices?
the abutter notices for Curryville.
Move to pay.
Oh, sorry, $60.30.
JD?
Second? Mr. Melvin? All those in favor?
All right.
Okay, unanimous, thank you.
Thanks, too, 'cause I always forget it.
Okay, butters notices and certified mail, okay.
The junctions that they give us.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is for
That's
that.
that.
This goes with the
That's
thing.
the NEPR, yep.
Yeah,
That's for
NEPR.
Todd, Curryville.
Yeah, right. Oh, well,
That's okay.
I always do that. Okay, correspondence.
It's the
Oh.
road maintenance bond for
Okay.
Russell Lane.
All right. Town engineer has said that he visited the site to check the roadway
Okay, so we're talking about
for the
the
request to release the maintenance bond on Puzzle Lane,
road on Puzzle Lane.
right? And consulted,
Don't about that.
consulted
The road
with,
doesn't meet, it doesn't come up against my property. Okay.
are you recusing yourself?
No.
Oh, okay,
I don't have to on this one.
okay, okay. He consulted with Mike Pivero to get the opinion, and his summary is the fact that it was completed November 2015. The roadway is in good condition. A couple of minor issues need to be addressed. And he said, once these minor issues are addressed, I recommend that the maintenance bond in the amount of $68,954.55 be released. But we don't have a recommendation that those minor issues have been done yet. So
He said he'll go back this week, so.
I'll go back this week. So since we're not going to meet for a while, do you want to say that we can release this once we get a notice from
a
the town
clean-
engineer?
I will move that we authorize the chair to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the release of the road maintenance bond in the amount of $68,954.55.
Plus interest?
No, it's a.
There's no interest on this?
This is a letter of credit,
Okay,
right?
letter of credit, okay. Okay,
After the receipt of a clean letter from the town engineer regarding Puzzle Lane.
We also got a note from road agent, right?
Yep.
And actually, should we get both of their input before we release it?
Okay.
okay, all right.
Clean
And then the
clean
road
letter from the
agent
road agent and the
and the
town
town
engineer.
engineer. Okay, thank you. Only item I have is gravel shoulders. Pavement needs to have gravel. Okay, all right. Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
Mr. Melvin seconds. All those in favor?
All right.
Unanimous, thank you very much. Ah, 27-2.
27.2, that's the newest buildings he built, right?
No.
The two little buildings.
Oh, yeah, yes.
The
yes,
two
yes,
little
the two little
buildings.
buildings.
Close to the 108, so again, okay, I'm here.
Okay, can you explain this to me? Why there's two different numbers?
Mr. Cole, McDonough requested his bond returned, or the letter of credit, for $25,573.
Okay.
Town engineer came in and said, yep, you can do that, but now we're looking for a project completion bond of $33,000. So Mr. Coleman will have to release that and then get a new bond for the 33,1.
We usually do it the other way
Suggest that we do
around.
it the other way around.
Right, that's what,
That we,
we get this first and then release that. That's what we usually do.
Madam Chair, I would move that we authorize the chair to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the release of the $25,573 site restoration bond
On,
on Lot 27-2 upon the receipt in hand of the project completion bond for $33,117.
Seconded.
you got it? All those in favor?
All right,
Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Ah, yes,
Excuse myself as I'm a member of the Country Pond Fishing Gang.
okay, all right.
Are you an officer?
No.
You're just a member.
You're just a member. It's up to you. You don't have
You
to.
don't have to, but would you rather? Okay.
I want to avoid any
Okay.
possible
Mr.
impropriety.
Shaw is recusing himself.
And you have plenty of members here to,
Okay. If you remember, we did ask the town engineer to go out and check and to make sure that everything was complied with the Country Pond Fish and Game excavation plan restoration. And he said that everything is fully established, and he recommends the remaining financial guarantee be returned. It's the amount of $5,983 plus whatever interest it has accrued.
Madam Chair, I would move that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen the release of the existing financial guarantee for the Country Pond Fishing Game Club excavation plan in the amount of $5,983 plus interest.
Mr. Melvin seconds. All those in favor?
all right.
Okay. Thank you, yes, he's recused.
That's it for correspondence. We do not have a meeting on the 11th because of voting.
Right, yeah, just remember that. Please come out and vote.
I have just one thing. The Municipal Association's Law Lecture Series is now open. It's on September 26th, October 3rd, and October 10th up in Stratham. I think there's one in Derry as well. The first one I want to say is just general land use in Stratham. On October 3rd is basically the planning board basics. And then on the 10th is the solar arrays and land use. So basically things that you are allowed to regulate with solar panels and things you're not, and the benefits and negatives of each.
Is people on the board interested in getting a ordinance to cover solar panels? We currently don't have any regulations on solar panel fields. I'm not talking,
Oh, you're not talking about
this is
somebody's
not talking
roof.
about some solar panels on a residential roof. I'm talking about solar panel fields.
Yeah,
Right up on 125.
I mean, is that something that we should start to look at?
I don't know, I just saw in the paper, there was some big thing about them wanting to, like, is it not letting them re-meter over a certain amount? So in other,
Yeah,
I don't have the right language.
So the thing that most towns are struggling with are group net metering. That's
That's it.
where basically you can put, and it's about a footprint of land of about a quarter acre to get up to the 1 megawatt of, under 1 megawatt of production of solar panels. So you basically are able to power a couple of houses and most towns are wanting to regulate whether or not they're okay with the group net metering, because technically it falls under an essential service definition, which you guys allow anywhere in town. Whether or not you're okay with that on a residential property, because there are some places where people want to have big fields, they want to put these up. Whether or not there's concern about ground-mounted solar arrays, even if it's just a single one for a single-family home. The visual impact of that, whether you want to not let what are open properties utilize it, if you just want to restrict it to flat rooftops. Those are some of the issues that most towns are coming up against.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of issues, and I think it's something that we should do something about, because otherwise you're going to get uncontrolled.
So just a single ground-mounted solar panel would, in Newton, really fall under an accessory structure for just a residential, really if it's just going to power that one residence. When you start to get into what is group net metering, and that's where you have enough solar panels to produce for a number of normal-sized single-family homes, because you're selling enough power back to the grid.
Right.
That becomes actually the need for a site plan, or Newton. Well, because it's a non-residential use, it's not even an accessory use, it's a dual use of a property. So they would have to come in for a site plan. Now, whether you want to have different setbacks, or you want to restrict what zones they're in, or, you know, they can only be on roofs, or they can only, that's why you would want to have a zoning ordinance.
Are other towns doing this?
I've worked on it in 2 towns, yes.
Really? Because I know on the way to Exeter and Kensington, there's like a field that has a whole bunch of them out in their
On 125
field.
next to the Brentwood Fire Department.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
that
yeah.
happens to be a town-owned solar array.
That's different. That's supposed to save them $1 million over 10 years or something.
But there are, I've dealt with at least probably 3 or 4 group net metering ones. Those are the ground-mounted solar arrays that to produce that just short of 1 megawatt. It's about a quarter acre footprint of solar panels that you actually need.
I would like to actually attend, as I always have in the past. Last year, the Board of Selectmen determined that is part of my function as the ex officio on the
Oh.
planning board.
Okay.
And therefore, they would not pay for it. They would,
Oh, for you to,
I had given it to Nancy, she spoke to the board, and the board went, no. But by that point, by the time the board decided that, it was too late. I would like to go this year. There are 2.
They're also having a full-day one on October 20th in
Right.
Concord.
are they free?
No.
No,
I want to say it's like
$35 a person.
$45 per session, something like that.
Or
I
3
think-
for 90 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the planning board basics one is always a good idea. And if you guys are interested in doing solar, go to the solar one too. The other one,
I mean, that's why I asked the question. I
Yeah,
wanted
the solar one is the one that I thought would, because not only do we have all the planning aspects, though, quite honestly, it doesn't add more to, some people say it doesn't add more to impervious surfaces, some people say that it can cause changes in groundwater. However, there are states now that will the legislative bodies have actually determined that if you have solar panels on your roof, any surplus power does not have to be purchased, but it has to go into the grid. So you go to places like Hawaii, you have to have banks of, actually in Hawaii, you're not allowed to put the power into the grid. You have to actually store it in your own battery backups. Well, but when you start talking mega-sized lithium batteries for people's storage, you're looking at things that the planning board might want to consider in, depending upon congestion of, I don't know if anybody's ever seen Paul has probably seen a lithium battery if you damage it.
It's a hell of a bang.
Yeah.
Fire.
Yep, and fire.
for most
You're right.
planning boards, it's the general land use, and then also, is it an accessory structure? Does it need, is the visual impact on the land, does it impact the character?
Right.
If you had a historic district, do you want it in the historic district or not? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
There-
there's a lot of things.
there are a
and-
couple of good model ordinances that came out in the past few years.
to, how much do we have in the budget? $400?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, to attend, yeah.
The one, I only wanted to attend that one, but I was told by the town administrator that that's a planning board
Yeah.
augmentation.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so-
you could take it out, that's what,
So we need a motion to, if we want to
But
say yes
from the
for
sounds of
that.
it, Roger might like to attend.
yeah, I haven't, I'd like a motion to approve, even though I may or may not go. I haven't really decided whether I'm going to go or not, but seeing that the timing is such that,
Well, we have enough money in the budget
right,
to cover 12,
yeah, 'cause I don't know if any of the other.
four people
members-
taking all three, a maximum of 12.
Right,
Yeah,
okay. Well, who else would be interested in going? Just the two of you?
Jim.
You?
okay,
Okay.
so there's still, there's enough money for all three of us to go for whatever we want to go for, to cover the registration and mileage.
Okay.
That's sort of what I would,
Actually, mileage comes out of a different line.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
But, yeah, so,
okay.
Yeah, because I go to the ones in Derry because they're,
and like I said, I'm not sure whether.
I don't think
My
we even-
schedule, I may end up even going to the one
Right.
in Concord and spending the whole day there.
I don't think we even need a motion. I mean, it's just training
Yeah.
and
Okay.
mileage, which we normally do.
Okay,
So if you're interested, contact Gail. She will let you know. You can let them know the schedules, which ones, when.
If you just go onto the RPC website, it's the first link under our news.
they announced them in,
There was going to be some training online months ago.
webinar.
Oh, you mean a webinar?
Webinar, yeah, they could move to sometime around now. Is that still happening?
I haven't seen anything.
training for what?
So long ago, I forget what
There,
it was.
there are, the NHMA has 2 webinars coming up. Town and City is in my truck, and I remember seeing it in there. And they announced the fact that the land use, the law lecture series was coming up, but they didn't announce the topics.
Yeah, it's the planning board
that's
basics,
up on
the
the-
solar, and then the third one.
That's up on your RPC?
Yep.
website?
I mean, it's
Okay.
on
Okay.
NHMA too. but-
Okay. All right.
We don't get another copy of that until later this,
Right.
it should be in by now.
Okay. All right, well then,
Here it is.
That is it.
he's always got everything. Well, why don't we just make a copy of this?
Yeah.
For the,
For everybody?
yeah, for the interested
That is the
people.
right piece of paper,
You
right?
just need,
Looks like
what,
it.
2 copies of that.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Zlot might want to go. We do allow alternates.
All right, make 5, please.
That- Sometimes they can be very, very entertaining and exciting to listen to, and occasionally
Not.
Informative.
The solar one should be good. Clay, who is one of the presenters, used to work at RPC.
Who is it?
Clay Mitchell?
Oh, I don't know him.
I learned a ton about the solar stuff when I put mine
Do you have a
in. Painful.
model regulation?
Yeah, there's one on the.
That was the next thing I was just going to ask.
Yeah, there's one on the Office of Strategic Initiatives. It's the former OEP
Yeah, maybe we could
website, but I can forward
take
it
a
to
look
you.
at that. Thank you for
Color
having
and
that,
everything,
Roger.
Good, good.
Yeah, I mean, Roger even prints in color.
That was sort of my
Oh, that's his
mistake.
own-
You-
that's his
You just
first
hit
one.
print in it.
I don't need
I didn't change it to go black and white on my printer.
How many solar panels do you think we can get?
Huh?
I would register soon.
I don't want a solar panel in my backyard.
Actually, that one
Cell
sounds
tower
interesting.
maybe, but
I'll probably read a survey plan.
Yeah.
paid for a
Yeah,
cell
but
tower.
that's why I was thinking of going all day, just because there were 2 really good ones and one that's always good background, which probably
would
would be really
register
good for
soon.
you.
Register soon, okay.
What dates are these?
September 26th, September 3rd, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
September
The dates are
26th,
here.
October 3rd, and October 10th, but they're
Okay.
sort of rotating around the state.
These are
If
the
whoever's,
locations.
if whoever's interested in going, excuse me, if whoever's interested in going will tell Gail by Thursday which ones you want to go to so that she can register you and get the check going, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Melvin, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, $35 a piece, $90 for all 3.
9:15.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I'm only doing these 2.
Where are you guys going? Where are you going for it?
I'd be going to Derry.